So I recently done something I always thought as a photographer I would never ever do, and that is to switch from Lightroom Classic over to Lightroom, as it's called, the cloud version of Lightroom. And in this video I'm going to discuss my reasons for doing that. So to begin with, let's just go over the basic differences between Lightroom Classic and Lightroom. I think for the purposes of this video, I'll call it Lightroom CC. Originally, Adobe called it Lightroom Mobile, and then they changed it to Lightroom CC, and now they just call it Lightroom. Even though the original version of Lightroom was always Lightroom, now that's been changed to Lightroom Classic. It's all very, very confusing. It's one of the reasons why I kind of made the switch, just to avoid having different versions of Lightroom on my computer. So for the purposes of this video, I'll stick with Lightroom Classic for the original version and Lightroom CC for the sort of other version. I'm not going to go into all the specifics of all the differences between the two programs. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to talk about the different packages you can subscribe to. Since Adobe started this subscription service, I've always subscribed to what they call the photography plan, where you get Lightroom Classic, Lightroom CC, and Photoshop, and 20 gigabytes of storage for $9.98 a month. The other package you can subscribe to is the Lightroom plan. The difference between that is that you only get Lightroom CC, you don't get Photoshop, you don't get the classic version of Lightroom. The flip side, however, is that instead of 20 gigabytes of storage, you get 1 terabyte of storage, and it's the same price, $9.98 a month. So because ever since I started photography, I've always used Lightroom Classic. When I started using Lightroom, it was the only version available, and I've always used it, so I've always subscribed to the photography plan, and that gives me Photoshop as well. But to be honest, I don't use Photoshop. I only do basic edits, basically tonal adjustments, and I do use graduated filters and adjustment brushes, but I don't do anything real heavy. I don't use masks or layers. So Photoshop just isn't something that I use, so I don't need that. But as I've always used Lightroom Classic, I'm just kind of given Photoshop in that bundle anyway. When the mobile version first came out, I did kind of play around with it, but it was very, very limited, so didn't really fulfill my needs. That was then. Things have now changed, however. In the past as well, I've always been skeptical of having my photos stored on the cloud. Very much changed my opinion on that, and that is in fact reason number one why I've made the switch from Classic to CC. So in the past, I wanted my photos stored on my hard drive so I could see them. I knew they were there. I was in control of it. I didn't like the idea of them being stored somewhere up in the cloud on some service somewhere. Now, in the past, I was worried about storing photos in the cloud. I was worried about, what if someone hacks into the system and gets access to my photos, steal my photos. But the truth is that no system is 100% safe. Even storing my photos locally on a hard drive, yes, I can back them up on another external hard drive, but if both of those hard drives are in the same location, so here in my home, what if I have a fire in my home? What if someone breaks into my home and steals not just my computer, but my external hard drive as well? So there's pros and cons to both when it comes to safety. Now I've just made peace with the fact with storing my photos locally on the cloud. We've just kind of became more accustomed to it now. We're more used to it now. All of us save things on the cloud, whether it's photos with Google Photos or Apple Photos. All of us pretty much use the cloud anyway, so I've just kind of gotten more used to that idea. And the main plus side for me is just not having to worry about storage on my computer and clogging up my hard drives. I've recently changed my computer. For the last sort of 3-4 years, I've used a laptop which had a 1 terabyte SSD hard drive. And between all my photos and all of the video work that I do in particular, that hard drive was getting more and more clogged up. I've switched now. I don't use that laptop anymore. I've now replaced it with one of the new M1 Mac Minis, and that has an even smaller hard drive, only 256 gigabytes, so considerably smaller. And I want to try and keep that hard drive as clean as possible, so I can maximize the performance of the hardware. The more and more you clog up the hard drive on your system, the slower, the more bogged down that system is going to become. So I really want to keep the hard drive in my Mac Mini as clean and slimline as possible. So for me personally, I actually now prefer having my photos stored on the cloud as opposed to clogging up hard drives, having to buy bigger hard drives, slowing down my system. It actually now gives me more peace of mind just uploading my photos to the cloud, and then I don't really have to worry about it from there. Following on from that, reason number 2 is using Lightroom CC. I can edit my photos on the go on different devices. So because my photos are stored on the cloud, I can edit my photos here at home on my Mac Mini. But then if I'm away traveling somewhere, or I'm on my break at work or whatever, I also have a tablet which I have Lightroom installed on as well, and everything is just seamless between the two devices. All my photos are there, and they sync perfectly. All my edits sync perfectly. So if I'm editing a photo on my Mac Mini, and then I then go away and continue editing that photo on my tablet, all those changes will sync immediately on my tablet, and then any changes I then make on my tablet, next time I open up Lightroom on my Mac Mini, it'll all be there seamlessly. And the way most of us kind of live now, and most of us have got more than one device. We've got a laptop or computer, we've got tablets, we've got mobile phones. So that Lightroom CC version actually, I think, fits our lifestyles much better. Reason number 3 is that Lightroom CC has everything that I need. When Adobe first released the mobile or CC version, it was very, very limited. It didn't even have things like graduated filters, which I use a lot doing landscape photography. It was very, very basic. Basically, you could do tonal adjustments, and that was pretty much it. There were so many features it was lacking. But as the years have gone on, Adobe have continued to improve it, continued to add features, and now it has everything that I need. It has all the different filters, graduated filters, radial filters. It has adjustment brushes, all the different sliders with dehaze, clarity, all of those. It has them all. So everything that I need is now in Lightroom CC. And so I much prefer now that I just have one version of Lightroom on my desktop and there's no confusion. When I had both versions, the amount of times even the logos look the same. So the amount of times I would want to open a specific version of Lightroom on my desktop and accidentally click the one logo because they look the same and end up opening the wrong version of Lightroom. It's just overly complicated having these different versions and changing the names between the two. So it's just much more simpler to just have the one version and the version that works perfectly for me. There might be a lot of photographers watching this who think they need to use the classic version as I did just because of the tools that it has, and thinking that Lightroom CC is much more restricted. However, if you haven't tried CC in a long time, have a look at it again, because it really has been updated and improved a lot over the years, over the months, and it basically has the majority of features that the classic version does. How it does differ mainly is in the cataloging. With the CC version, you don't have to worry about keywords. It doesn't catalog things in the same way. It basically, you organize photos by putting them in albums, and I actually prefer that because it's less workload. So it's fewer things I have to think about when I'm importing photos. It's just an easier, more streamlined workflow. And the final reason why I've switched from Lightroom Classic to Lightroom CC is just the speed and performance. Now, anyone who has used Lightroom Classic will know it's pretty slow. It's one of the main criticisms Lightroom always gets. Anyone who has used Lightroom Classic knows that it is slow. It doesn't even seem to matter too much what hardware you're using. Even on a brand new high-spec machine, it still always seems to be laggy and slow. And even when Adobe release updates saying, oh, it's now faster, it never seems to be. And that has been the main thing that has always infuriated me with Lightroom. Just scrolling between photos. When you import your photos and you just want to scroll through and view them, it is so laggy. So one of the main benefits of the CC version is it's just so much faster. It's a more sort of slim version, I suppose. So it's not as heavy on the processor, and so it's just much more faster. There's not as much lag when you're moving between photos, when you're making adjustments. It's particularly well optimized for things like iPads, so it is incredibly quick on iPads and devices like that. It's very well optimized. Many people do think that Adobe will eventually phase the Lightroom Classic version out. Yeah, I would not be surprised at all if that happens. It's probably part of the reason why they ditched the name. They went from calling it Lightroom Mobile and then they changed it to Lightroom CC, and now it's just called Lightroom. That suggests that Adobe wants it to be the main version, whereas the sort of older one is now called Classic. Yeah, I think it might eventually, probably not time any soon, but I think it might well get phased out. I do think Lightroom CC is the future, really. Yes, years ago it was very limited. That's completely changed now. I think, as I've said, it better suits our modern way of living, where we're always on the go, we're on different devices. Storing things in the cloud is more sort of normal to us now. If you're a photographer who has gotten used to using the classic version, like I was, and if you're of the belief that you like to store photos locally, or you think the the CC version is too restricted, I really hope you sort of reconsider these thoughts, because things have changed, and as I've said in previous videos, you've kind of got to move with the times. And I think now in the modern world, the CC version is the better version. And me personally, I'm really pleased I've made the switch. I just like not having to worry about storage, not worrying about clogging up hard drives. I like that I can now edit faster on a better optimized bit of software. I can edit on the go between different devices. It's something I never thought I'd do, but I'm really pleased I have, because it's been working really well for me since I made the switch. So I hope that helps anyone who is curious, confused about the two different versions of Lightroom, and anyone who is not too sure which version is best for them. If it has helped at all, then please do give it a thumbs up. That would be great. I guess all that's left for me to say is thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.